Welcome to the Savvy Property Investors Podcast, a weekly show that delivers the best hard-hitting property industry news, business advice, and talks that will get you ascending in the real estate industry. Now, here's your host, the amazing award-winning property and business coach, best-selling author, and serial entrepreneur, Miss Sapphire Gray.
Welcome to another Property Investor Show. Our guest is none other than my daughter, Serline Brown, co-founder of Bennett & Brown, an established private deputyship firm who provides financial planning and financial management services to the vulnerable adults. In addition to this, they offer to help individuals or companies set up a recession-resistant business model, providing vital housing and support services to vulnerable adults. She will be sharing with us the many things to consider when setting up an assisted living accommodation, procedures to navigate, and many pitfalls to avoid. Supported living is designed to enable vulnerable adults to live as independently as possible within their own homes or within a local community. I am Sapphire Gray, so let's get started. Serline, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're more than welcome.
How have you been?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Thank you for asking. So I want to start off with asking you, what is a supported living provider?
Well, you kind of touched upon it in the lovely introduction. Supported living is designed to be a client-centered support that enables adults to live independently, as you said. Essentially, it's, people can live in their own homes or in a supported living facility where they can either get support, which would be regulated activities or unregulated activities, but it just enables people to have a slightly more independent, semi-independent living rather than being in, 100% just that's it care home.
Okay. Is there a specific age of people having independent living?
No. So supported living covers probably, I would say, from from the beginning of adulthood, which was 18, right up until, you leave this earth, essentially. There are different types of supported living. So it just depends on the age range and the type of support that they actually need.
So is this type of service in demand?
Oh, yes, I would say definitely so. A lot of local authorities struggle with people who are, I'd say, somewhat independent but need that little extra care. That's, one type of person. There's also a lot of people going into care later in life, people who suffer from dementia, Alzheimer's, who just can't get around their own home like they used to, and looking for a lot more care and support available. So I would say definitely the demand is there, and as we get older and as the population gets older, the demand on stuff like care homes are even more increased.
I noticed that within our industry, I'm an investor myself, that most of the property strategies that I use is not normally regulated. The HMO is regulated. So what is the regulated activities in regards to this type of provision or property strategy?
Okay, so for supported living accommodation, if you offer any kind of personal care, so where you physically are looking after them, you may have to wash them, dress them, feed them, stuff like that, which I suppose a good example would be a care home with people who have extra needs, and housing people who require nursing. Treatment for stuff like substance misuse, disease, disorder, or injury. So there is supported living that deal with people with brain injuries, severe brain injuries, who may not able to feed themselves and stuff like that. That would be a supported living that would be regulated, because obviously it takes a lot more. There's a lot more things to consider. Obviously, there's safety as well. A lot of these people may lack capacity, which is the reason why Bennett & Brown went into this side of it, because we deal with people who lack capacity, and we found a lot of them were going into supported living, and we saw that there was a demand for it. A lot of people wanted to get into supported living but didn't know where to start. Where we've got first-hand knowledge from it, it made sense as a natural progression to move into it.
Yeah, excellent. And so what is the unregulated activities within it then?
Basically anything that is, as long as you don't provide personal care and you don't house people, as I said, with misuse, drug misuse, injury, and stuff like that, that are all classed as unregulated. So a good example would be, say 18, well, say 16 to 21-year-olds who may have to leave home for the first time. They don't necessarily need full-on support. You know, they can bathe themselves, look after themselves, but they need a little bit of guidance. So that would be the young people's homes that they have, or mother and baby units. Also would come under that. Some women refugees can come under that, because you're not giving that personal care. However, you are giving them a safe space for them to hopefully move on into completely independent living. You know, potentially private renting somewhere, or council accommodation. So it's anything that doesn't cover the basics of personal care. So I would say people who have capacity about them but need that little extra help.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. And can you share what is involved in setting up this kind of business? And can anyone do it?
I would say anyone can do it. I think with any type of business in general, I would always advise research. And this is what we found when clients were coming to us. They just saw dollar signs or pound signs in England. They thought, right, I can make some money from it. I just want to jump head in, which is great, but you do have to do research. So it's stuff like deciding whether or not you're going to be regulated. So are you going to be offering personal care? Are you going to do, those clients who really need 24-hour care? Are you going to do it for the young people who might not need a lot of care? Are you going to do supported living in the sense of when people slightly get older, over 55s, over 60s, where they have little flats to themselves, but there will be a warden that keeps an eye on everybody just in case. So I'd say definitely home in on what kind of property or what kind of supported living facility you want to achieve and you want to provide. Then you need to look out, once you've decided that, is it regulated? Decide, see which side you're going. Is it regulated? Then it's just like any business, you set it up. It's about looking at what documents you need. Some things are monitored by CQC, so you have to make sure you look at that. It's company registration, VAT registration, data protection. There's quite a few bits, but I would say it's no different to most businesses. If you're setting up a limited company, there are steps that you have to follow, and there are things that you have to do legally. And it's exactly the same, recruiting staff members and making sure you get good staff, because that is very important. That's one thing that, unfortunately we hear in the news too often, that this staff done this or staff done that. So you have to make sure that is something you really make an effort for. And there's also
to get DBS checked as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. When you're dealing with anyone who's vulnerable, any children, anything like that, old age, DBS is very important. The last thing you want is to hire somebody who should never been working with children or should never been working with vulnerable adults or anything like that. So I say you have to DBS every single person. And to be safe, even for me personally, even someone who might be just doing HR, I would say, make sure you keep on top of stuff like that, because you are going to be working with people who are maybe not 100% vulnerable if you don't go through the regulated route, but you deal with people who are somewhat vulnerable, and you need to make sure that you're handling this correctly.
Yeah, because not every property strategy would you need to get somebody DBS checked. And I know with assisted living, you actually do. But would the owner who wants to set up this facility have to be DBS checked as well? And what kind of compliance would they need to go through?
I mean, if they are going to be working directly with the clients, I would say it would be a good thing to do. Yeah, I think no matter what, if you're going to be dealing with clients, it would always be best, for the sake of, I think it's about £50 at the moment. For the sake of £50, it's great to say, everyone on the roster, including, the top down to the bottom, have all been checked. And that puts a little bit of extra faith in people to know, actually, you know what you're doing, you care about who you're looking after. And just to make sure, don't get me wrong, it's not necessarily necessary in, unregulated, if you're not going to actually have access to the clients. But I do think it's good practice to just move forward to always do your DBS checks on everyone.
And is that something that you actually do on behalf of your clients as well? Do you actually do DBS checks for them, or can you do that?
Yeah, I was going to say, not at the moment, but funny you should mention that. We are looking at being able to offer that as a service as well, because we are finding a lot of people don't know where to turn. And let's be honest, there's a lot of charlatans. Just like, as I said, setting up a limited company, you type it in on Google and you get 100 people telling you it's going to cost you £2,000 or £25,000. I know that's exaggeration, but just to do something that could cost £15, I get, you pay for someone's time for helping you, but there are a lot of charlatans out there who will just take your money and actually turns around and you don't get what you paid for. So we are looking at offering that service to be able to offer it for a third party, just so people know they've got a name that they can trust.
Brilliant. So I want you to join us after the break with more insights from Serline.
This week's episode of the Savvy Property Investors Podcast was brought to you by our sponsor, the Savvy Women Group. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to our website, www.savvywomen.co.uk, to gain access to our free resources and more insights about our guest speaker today. Remember, we make your business our business, so you can unlock your full potential and improve your quality of life.
Welcome back. So we're going to get more insights from Serline now. So Serline, what kind of properties are the best to do this type of business with?
I would definitely say large properties. Definitely properties with 4 or more bedrooms would be the best way of getting the most out of it. I would say at least 4 bedrooms, because then you can have several people and it becomes more worthwhile. I mean, obviously the bigger the better, but I would say minimum it would be good to have about a 4-bedroom property upwards.
And what type of areas should people look into if they want to set up this as a business? What kind of things should they be looking at? So, for instance, when I look for properties, I want properties where it's located centrally for me to invest in. They're normally semi-detached or detached homes. I look at for professionals coming into the area or family lets. So what type of things should people look at for when they're setting up a business? Because supported living, there is still a stigma behind mental health. And obviously we've got to be, people will be considerate of where they're setting up their businesses as well, as in order not to be blocked by the local authority or have any problems with sort of the local residents. So where would you typically say is a good sort of area to start looking when you're investing in this type of strategy and doing this type of business?
I mean, that's a really good question. I wouldn't necessarily say there's a particular area. And bear with me, the reason why I say that is because a lot of people do not know they're living next to supported living facilities. A lot of the time you don't. I think you're right. When people think of supported living, they automatically think of people who are on drugs or people who are alcoholics. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of supported living facilities for those kind of people, to enable them to get help. But the majority of it, I would say there isn't. And just like women's refuges and some men's refuges as well, you have no idea they're there. And that's why they're designed the way they are. I personally think from the clients we've had, there isn't any one great area. A lot of our clients are all over the UK. And it's quite surprising. And I think it's a lot of it's to do with affordability. So you could get someone from, let's just say I'm in London. So someone from London who needs, they've got a brain injury. Let's go, to the top end. They've got a brain injury. They will look for accommodation that's suitable for them anyway. They do try to keep them as close to family as possible, but realistically, that's not always possible. So I have had people who have come from London, who are now up in Birmingham, who are up in Leeds, and so on and so forth, because it's the best facility for them. And if you just think of your own family, if you had a family member who needed help and a facility was the only best place for them, you wouldn't know where you had to travel to see them. And that just says to me, it doesn't matter. A lot of them tend to be out of London as well, because you get more bang for your buck, so to speak. You get the bigger properties outside of London. So I think people shouldn't be afraid to not just look at the central cities. Look on the outskirts. I've had clients in outskirts of Birmingham, outskirts of Manchester. All I say is, with anything, research, contact a local council, speak to, if you can, have a word with a local social worker, and kind of see what kind of demand they have in that area. Because I'd probably guarantee that most social workers you speak to will have 1 or 2 clients that they say, well, we're looking for a facility for them close. but they can't find it. So they are looking on the outskirts or looking a bit further out, that people can travel. As I said, a gentleman of mine was in Birmingham, and he also had family he used to travel down to Kent to see his family.
Yeah.
So, people travel where they need to travel. It's just about where's the availability of the facilities.
Absolutely. Okay, so what are some of the types of supported living?
Okay, so we touched upon this a little bit. So you would have stuff like women's refuge. You will have I say more, in my head, I'll class it as more the hospital based. And when I say that, I mean where they get a bit more clinical care. So they might have 24-hour care or something similar. You have, the young people supported accommodation. That would be slightly more, that would be unregulated, for instance, because they don't need personal care. It's just about that transition from possibly being in mum and dad's house to now living by themselves at a young age, to then be able to actually rent properly and not have any troubles moving forward. There's also, I hate the term old people's home, because it's not just old people who live in there, and I say mature people's home. However, we are finding with Alzheimer's and dementia hitting people a lot younger now, you are finding people as young as 40, sometimes even younger in these accommodations, because traditionally it's had the best wrapped around care.
Yeah.
So because it's had the best wrapped around care, people are putting younger people in there because they know they will be looked after a lot better.
Yeah, and also I know, as you know, I was in a care facility when I was younger, so I was in a children's home myself.
Yeah.
So these are the types of businesses that I sort of look to invest in as well. So people that are leaving the care system have somewhere where they can transition from that care system into assisted living, not because they can't cope, but just to give them the basis of what it is to live independent and by themselves. So is that something else that you notice that people are getting into now?
Oh, I would say on a major scale, yes. Because as you said, I mean, you spoke it 100% correct. People who have come from care homes, yes, they're still slightly independent, but, they've had that room, they've had those rules, just like it's no different to kind of living at home. There's rules you abide by, etc.
Yeah.
When you get old enough and transition out of care, you then go into, your own accommodation. And what I found in my life as being a housing options officer as well, a lot of these young people fell. So they, rather than moving them into a kind of transitional period, they move them straight into a nice flat. Great, that's fantastic. They've got somewhere, they're not on the streets. It's lovely that they've had a hard life and got something. However, they don't know how to handle that. They might not know about budgeting. They might not know about actually just cooking some food for themselves. Or it's not right to have your friends over constantly trashing your place. So we're finding a lot of young people are failing when they get a lovely accommodation. They are failing because they haven't got that opportunity to be equipped with that knowledge. I
absolutely agree with you on that, because, and this is why I want to get into that space, because we found that when people leave home, or even young people just don't have the financial awareness of what it costs to live. They don't know how to pay bills. They're not responsible for anything. They've been taken care of. So being assisted is different than being taken care of.
Exactly.
So when you're in these types of facilities, it's allowing them to actually learn how to look after themselves, how to navigate life, how to find work, how to go to work every day, how to buy food, learning how to cook, because there's cooking facilities on site as well, which they get assistance how to cook for themselves as well. So I think this is really good. I mean, even with the HMOs as well, it's similar but unsimilar in that, yes, young people are leaving home now and going into HMO units to be independent, but having to navigate the financial side of it, paying their bills, having to cook for themselves, doing their laundry. All of these things as well come into play when you're doing a supported living business as well, as like a HMO strategy, if you was going to take that up as well. So when it comes to like the local authority, what's their involvement in setting up a supported living accommodation?
I suppose it all depends. I would advise anyone who wants to set up anything like that, speak to your local authority, because they are likely to be your best friend. because they can refer clients to you. You can work closely with social workers, housing options officers. You know, as I said, in my time of being a housing options officer, we'll get social workers coming to us all the time and saying, you know, I've got this person who, let's just say a young person, and we need to support them. How can we go about it? Do you know any places that they can go to, any supported living facilities? So they do often come to us because sometimes they get stumped. You know, it's not always there for them. And we will say, oh, okay, I've just heard about this new company that's set up, for instance, which actually happened to me. And they're helping people and they're supported. So that's always a good link. We all have different knowledges and we all have different bits of information. So working together, you know, it means that you can get the best, you know, not only for your property can always being have residents or have clients in them, but it also means you can build up the rapport with the council, that they could be your best bit of always getting clients constantly, because once they know you're set up correctly, they'll be more than happy to say, right, we've got this gentleman, blah blah blah, and you know you never felt that way.
Absolutely, I agree with that, because even when we're setting up HMOs, I always tell my clients, contact the local authorities, have that conversation with them, say what your intentions are. That way you're building up that rapport and that relationship with them. So then when they realize what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to do, their involvement is a positive involvement, not a negative one, because they can give you the directions, and getting your legal paperwork as well right is key, because if you don't have it in place, then you're not really in business, and you really want to give the support to the people that are using your units in the correct way. So can you tell me, is there any funding that you can get to set up this type of business?
I mean, what I would say with regards to funding is, again, do your research. For instance, because of coronavirus, the big C, the new big C, I should say, there has been more funding for instance, rough sleeping. And they've also actually provided more funding for people who are going to be doing refuges for women, or what I say for women and men, because there are some out there for men as well. So they've started to look at adding on more funding, also more funding to cover if you've got existing property that you're using maybe for just a HMO, but you want to slightly change it. There's funding just to make sure it's COVID secure. So they've put money out there for COVID secure. I know London, for instance, are giving, there's a few pots of money for London, especially. I checked London because I'm a Londoner myself, but it's all about the research. There are bids out there that you can bid. There's tenders out there to bid on. Look around. You'll be surprised what you find. Obviously, it's always changing. So what I say today, you know, by next week it could have closed, but it's always changing. So I'll definitely look into it and see what you can find, because you'll be surprised. There are people out there, or there are funds out there where they just want to give people money to help them support other people.
Absolutely. And I always say go into the local government websites to see what funding's available, and also go to .gov as well, because there's a lot of fund. They've got a tab for funding as well, so you can do your due diligence and find out what funding is available for yourself as well. And when you're setting up this kind of business, you've got to make sure that you're also looking at the money that needs to go in to facilitate it, because there's a lot of caveats, there's a lot of moving parts in this business. And when I was doing my research on you, though you're my daughter, I looked at the costing of the compliance, the setting up of the company, registration of regulatory bodies, branding, you know, tendering writing, compliance management, planning permission, HMO applications, payroll systems. I mean, the list goes on. There's so much that goes behind what your business does. The recruitment process, recruitment of a manager for the facility as well, because those are the things that you need in place to actually run just one unit. And if you're intending to move on to many units, these are the things you're going to need in place. So it does amaze me the amount of work that you put in for your clients to get them to set up their supported livings and set it up with being compliant as well. So well done to you both.
Thank you. For us, it was just a case of we want people to succeed. And if we can make that, easier for them, then why not? Let's take the hassle, because we find a lot of people, they want to do these things, but it's scary to do all the paperwork. So if we can take that from them and enable them to do what they do best, securing the property, getting the property in up to code and stuff like that, it just takes that weight off their shoulder, which we're happy to take on, and it means their business will succeed a lot easier and a lot quicker.
That's absolutely excellent. So, but again, what is the kind of potential for those who wanting to set up this kind of facility? What's the potential income that they could derive from something like this?
I mean, that's a little bit of a hard question, or I should say open-ended question, because it really does depend. It really does depend on what type of accommodation you're going to offer. Will it be regulated? Will it not be regulated? I can't even spit out any figures at the moment, because it also depends on what part of the UK. But what I would say for anyone who maybe traditionally does HMOs, especially maybe people who do HMOs and rent to people on benefits, etc., there is a lot more money in supported living, whether it's regulated or not, than those traditionally. So traditionally, even if it's the young people who need just a little bit of a handhold, they would charge more than what the one bedroom or the single room rate would be. It would usually be the one room rate as a kind of rule of thumb. Don't get me wrong, it can be a lot more, but I would say rule of thumb, you do at least get the one bedroom rate, the LHA rate, which does vary up and down the country. But anyone who, as I said, works with any councils or worked with anyone, they know the one bedroom rate is typically only over 35s in a one bedroom would get that. You can get that for the 18-year-olds and stuff like that. But it does depend on what you're doing and activities. So I would say if anyone's got any questions or got any ideas of where they want to be, we can do research. That's one of the things we do. We research on what the potential money can be. So you can kind of see what you could be working with before even diving in.
Okay, excellent. So can you share with our audience, what is your number one tip?
Research. I think research is important no matter what you do. If I'm going on holiday, I don't just go to the local, I was going to say estate agents, but it's not an estate agent. Local travel agents. I search everywhere. And I think that is the most important thing. Really know what you're going to go into. Really know that's what you want to go into. Because, someone might say, actually, you know what? I want to earn a little bit more money. I want to get in the regulated, and then see what the regulated requires, and think after they've, spent 5 months on it, realize, oh, this is a lot. Okay, I need to pull back and I need to do more research. So I think it's just about researching. If you sit down from the get-go and kind of have an idea of what field you want to go in, or what way you want to go, start off small, maybe start off with the young people, the semi-independent living kind of facilities, and work your way up to maybe people with the brain injuries and stuff like that. I think would be a best bet. But just research. I know it's going to take time. Just like building up any kind of property portfolio, these things do take time, but the reward, not just monetary, just knowing, you're helping people, is so vast. I have very few people I've ever seen look back and think this was a waste of time. So much people are so happy with what they've done. And as I said, let's be realistic. It's not a charity. So for a lot of people, this is about money, yes. But I think the money and the sense of actually truly helping people is amazing.
Yeah, it outstrips it. I mean, 100%. The job of supporting people that are vulnerable, that need your support, the money is just an add-on, as opposed to what the actual core hope is to do for them. Yeah, that's brilliant, Serline. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. And you've given us a wealth of information about supported living. Would you share with us how people can get in touch with you if they need your services, and what services do you offer?
Okay, so if you want to speak to us, our website is bennett-brown.co.uk, and our social handles on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, it's Bennett and Brown, A&D Brown. If you want to get in touch with us, just hit up on any of the socials. You are more than welcome to private messages on social. We get a lot of interest that way. And an overview of what we actually do. Our core business is deputyship. Now, a lot of people have not heard of that word, that term, but actually a lot of people probably need it. So essentially, we manage the finances of vulnerable adults. So if you have an adult in your life who may not be able to manage their own funds because of disability, because of injury, or whatever it may be, we can step in and manage that for you. Because a lot of people don't want to manage it themselves. One, because, they're scared of, even if they miscalculated a penny, they could get in trouble for it. And two, a lot of the time people just don't want the hassle of having to manage people's money, which is understandable. Money is one of those things that can break up any friendship, marriage, or relationship. So we manage it for our clients. We ensure the best for them. A lot of our clients have allowance that they can spend however they wish, and we make sure all their bills are paid, their rent's paid, because that's even talking about when we're mentioning about young people. Finances is very important, and it's very easy if someone doesn't have the capacity to do it themselves, that they end up in a lot of rent arrears and end up evicted just because they needed someone to help them and no one was available. So that's essentially our core business. But as we've been speaking about, we have branched into helping people set up supported living facilities, and it's going well. We're really happy with the way it's going, even during COVID. We started up November 2019. So a couple of months in, COVID struck down. We couldn't access any care homes or anything like that. But we've been fighting through, and it's going really well, and we couldn't be prouder. And to touch on, we actually won an award this year in April for the UK's #1 deputyship firm in the whole of the UK. So that was really a proud moment for us, being such a young company, being two young girls. Well, I'm youngish, but me and my business partner Kira, we are female, we're young, and we've kind of come into this world and taken it a bit by storm, much to some people's dismay. But we're really rocking it, and we're really excited about the next few years to see how far we can take this.
Yeah. And I think that goes to the quality of who you and Kara are. You're caring people, and you care more about the people, and you put your energy into the people that you look after. And I know that the business with helping people set up their supported living facilities has really gone well through the COVID period, because it is recession proof.
Oh yeah.
Something that you can have. It's something that is definitely needed, and we've seen that the mental health rate in itself has gone up exponentially over this last 18 months or so. So taking care of ourselves, taking care of our mental health is really important. So having facilities where they can go and feel that they are being cared for is definitely something that I support, and definitely something that I really do appreciate that you and Kara have gone into and are supporting these people. So that's the end of our show today. Join us next week with another special VIP guest on the Savvy Property Investors Show. Don't forget to rate us, subscribe, review, download, and share. So come on, Savvy Investors, let's take flight. And I'll see you all on the next show.
This week's episode of the Savvy Property Investors Podcast was brought to you by our sponsor, the Savvy Women Group. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to our website, www.savvywomen.co.uk, to gain access to our free resources and more insights about our guest speaker today. Remember, we make your business our business, so you can unlock your full potential and improve your quality of life.